Am I on? Oh, I am. Whoa. I guess that would be yes. Welcome to the Trusted Town Hall in Charlotte, North Carolina, part of the North Carolina Trust Elections Tour. We are going literally from Murphy to Manteo. And in what, I don't know, the next 6 weeks, 28 cities. And we are just really glad to have you all here. I know we've got some folks who are actually watching on live stream as well. Hello, Internet Land. And we're recording tonight, so if you hear something exciting that you want to remember, you can go back and watch it. And we're really glad to have everybody here to hear about trusted elections. I'm Jennifer Roberts. I'm the former mayor of Charlotte, a former county commission chair for Mecklenburg County, and now I'm the co-lead for the North Carolina Network for Fair, Safe, and Secure Elections, along with Bob Orr, who you're going to meet in a minute. And we have been working to get good information to people about our democracy. The Carter Center, as you know, has been working for 40 years on election monitoring in other countries, supporting democracy and new democracies. And in 2020, they started working in the US on democracy and conflict resolution as well. And we do have someone from the Carter Center here from Atlanta, Sarah Matthews. Give her a hand. And I understand, where is our, oh, there he is. I want to introduce the host of this beautiful space, the president of Queen's University, who is going to give a brief welcome as well. And I'm just going to read from your LinkedIn, if that's okay. 29 years of experience in higher education and law. And he has also worked in fundraising, campaign leadership specialist in college advancement at Colby College. He has a strong background in admissions, enrollment, financial aid. He's vice president and associate dean at Carleton College and worked as a development officer. Also a former intellectual property attorney. He's done everything. And graduated from University of Minnesota Law School and Carleton. He also has received the 2021 Charlotte Most Admired CEO Award. And we know, let's give him a hand for that. In a big city like Charlotte, that's not easy to get. Welcome, Dan Lugo, and the floor is yours.
Well, thank you. We're honored thank you for your kind introduction. Your service to this community is just legendary. And as highlighted earlier in that recap of my LinkedIn professional background, I have the thing that I'm most proud of is that I'm the president here of Queen's University of Charlotte, and I'm going into my 6th year. And want to welcome you to this Green Hoot Recital Hall that's in our Sarah Belk Gambrell Center for Arts and Civic Engagement. And when you think of that pairing of the performing arts and civic engagement, you think of moments exactly like this. How we can animate this space to bring important conversations from our community to our stages. Want to tell you about how honored we are to host the North Carolina Trusted Election Tour here at Queens. As a former attorney, as a former political science major, and as an engaged citizen, the participatory process of trust in our elections are truly the bedrock of our democracy and the bedrock of our society. So this conversation is incredibly germane, and Queens has a role to play in that conversation to convene important dialogue in a very nonpartisan, unbiased, and transparent way. Regardless of what your political background is, you want to be able to trust the electoral process. And we are deeply indebted to the leaders, the organizations that do this work, and who you're going to hear from very, very shortly. You know, we are committed to fostering engaged citizenship with our students. That is one of the goals of our curriculum, so that when our students are here, they are practicing what it means to be civically engaged in their communities. And as we see our alumni out in the world, they do tremendous things, whether they're in the surrounding Mecklenburg County area or all over the world. And it is because of the conversations that we make so vibrant here. It is an honor to partner with the sponsoring organizations today, the Carter Center, the League of Women Voters, and Veterans for All Votes, who have come together to lift up a topic that's at play in the background in how every North Carolina citizen can have the confidence and faith in our electoral process here, not only because it's a giantly important election, but every year these leaders are doing the work to ensure that our election process and democracy are safe based on our voting processes. So thank you for allowing me to welcome the community, and thank you for everything that you're doing. And I look forward to tonight's conversation.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for mentioning the other partners. The League of Women Voters, both for the state and for Charlotte-Mecklenburg, have been great partners in this. All the leaguers here, raise your hand, wave, woohoo, yay. And then Veterans for All Voters has also, they've got networks across the state. They really helped get folks connected to this tour as well. Everything is done in partnership. We couldn't do this alone. So speaking of partnerships, when the Carter Center reached out to me and said, can you help with this? I said, well, you need somebody on the other side of the aisle so that we can model what we want our community to do, but also so that everybody will return our phone calls. So I reached out to Bob Orr, who I met, I don't know, at an event or two, and he has been an amazing, he is a former Republican North Carolina Supreme Court Justice. He also served on the North Carolina Court of Appeals. He is an Army veteran. He has practiced law in Asheville and Raleigh and now kind of wherever people are calling him to help. And he's been a tremendous partner as well. He's got a few comments as well, so join me in welcoming Bob Orr.
That's right. We always do the tall and short joke. I was the shortest guy that she could get to do this job. And that's not really, the party affiliation really isn't the only difference. There's an age gap. You notice she was reading from a phone. I have a legal pad here to make remarks. But anyway, it has been a great treat to work with Jennifer over these past 3 years. And I'm truly privileged. And I know she's special to the Charlotte community, but she's special to me, and I appreciate all she's done. Mr. President, you're a tough act to follow in making remarks. You have a wonderful university here, and your staff has been great in greeting us, and we're greatly appreciative. I did a little bit of historical research, and on November 5th, when the election formally takes place, it will be the 60th time that this country has gone to the polls to elect the President of the United States. So from George Washington to Joe Biden to this election on November 5th, through good economic times, through depressions, through war and peace, through landslide elections and some literally too close to call, citizens in North Carolina and all across this country over those 60 elections have one thing in common, in that they have exercised their right to vote and going to the polls to elect not just the president, but other federal, state, and local officials. And the common denominator, of course, then through those 60 presidential cycles is that in our democracy, we do it by casting our votes. And I'm curious, since we've got some students with us, this little hand-raising exercise, if this is your first time casting a ballot or voting in a presidential election, we got anybody new? Got a few newcomers here. Well, that's pretty special, yeah. And it is not true that I cast my first vote for Teddy Roosevelt. I did cast it by absentee ballot while I was in the Army in 1968. And it really is a special privilege, a special responsibility to go to the polls and cast your ballot. So I appreciate and wish all of you young voters well in doing so. Now, over these 60 presidential cycles, the right to vote has exponentially expanded. The number of elective offices, particularly here in North Carolina, has grown over the years. And the election system today in 2024 is a highly sophisticated and technical system run by election experts and staffed largely by your friends and neighbors of both major political parties. Today, North Carolina has 7.6 million registered voters, and that number is growing every single day. And across the 100 counties, from Cherokee County in the west, to Dare County and Currituck in the east, these elections are staffed by professional election officials and by more than 2,000 volunteers, Democrats, Republicans, unaffiliated, who are preparing to make sure that every person's right to vote will count and that the election results will be accurate down to the very last vote cast. And tonight, for the next 6 weeks, Jennifer and I and our team will be traveling across the state, presenting election experts and officials who have committed themselves to ensuring that your right to vote and your fellow citizens' right to vote will be protected, and that the system, as sophisticated as it is, will operate in a fair and safe manner. And so, with that, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, who I'm going to introduce. And for all of you in the Charlotte TV market, I suppose that Dedrick Russell is a household name. He's currently the executive producer of community content at WBTV. I have to tell you, Dedrick, my very first job, part-time job in college, was for your competitor, WSOC. So anyway, but that was a long time ago. We were still loading 16 millimeter film back in those days. Dedrick returned to WBTV, which he first joined in 2003, after spending a year and a half working on the corporate side of Gray Television as a talent acquisition specialist. He's traveled to colleges and universities and conferences looking for journalists to work at one of Gray's 113 television markets. And before joining WBTV, Russell also worked in Washington, D.C., where he covered George W. Bush's first presidential inauguration, the 9/11 terrorist attacks, and the Washington sniper attacks, and other unforgettable stories. He's an incredible journalist. He did this for us in 2022. We're delighted to have him again in Charlotte. And with that, please give a big round of applause to Dedrick.
Good evening. I hope everybody is doing well, and I always like to do this. Why don't you give yourselves a hand for showing up for this important event? Yes. It's always good. Knowledge is power, so we're going to learn and we're going to get educated so that we can empower others. We have a great panelist, experts who know what they are talking about, and nothing but facts here tonight. Nothing but facts. Nothing but facts. I want to first introduce Michael Dickerson. Michael Dickerson is the elections director for Mecklenburg County. He has been the elections director in Mecklenburg County since 1998. It's safe to say he's seen some things, right? He is responsible for administering the election process for the U.S. citizens of Mecklenburg County, including voter administration, precinct management, absentee and early voting, candidate registration, and campaign finance. And I have interviewed Michael Dickerson, and I came across an interview that he did with another media organization, and I love what he said. And this is what he said: "I've had people call up and get angry," he said, But my job is just to explain. Here's what we're doing. I'm not doing anything nefarious. I don't care about who wins or loses. I just want the one who wins to be the one who gets the most votes. It's all I'm doing. Thank you for doing all of that. Thank you. Next up, we have Liz McDowell. She's a Republican, and she's the secretary of the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections. She has been a member of the Board of Elections since 2013. It's safe to say she's seen a lot too for these past 11 years. She's a retired attorney, and she has practiced with Moore and Van Allen in Charlotte. She's also a volunteer at Brookstone Schools in Charlotte. So let's give it up for Ms. McDowell. It's always good to cross the aisle, so that's why we have John Gresham. He is a Democrat with the Board of Elections for Mecklenburg County, and he's been there since 2017. He is a partner with the firm in 10 Fulton, Walker, and Owen. Gresham has served as president of the Mecklenburg County Bar Foundation and as a member of the Mecklenburg County Bar Board of Directors. Thank you, Mr. Gresham. Let's give it up for Mr. Gresham. We also have Zach Deason. He is a partner in the Penniston Deason Law Firm. He was born in Charlotte and grew up in Union County. He has practiced law in Charlotte for 17 years with the same firm. So I guess you know some stuff too. 17 years with the same firm. He has been involved in local Democratic County Party politics and campaigns since 2007 and has been a resource on election law. Glad he's on the panel. Let's give it up for Mr. Deason. And we have Tory Crass. He is with the North Carolina Department of Information Technology Chief Risk Officer. He's all in the computers, all in that. In his role, he focuses on increasing the cyber maturity of the state and strengthening NCDIT's whole of state approach to cybersecurity with local, state, and federal partners. Previously, he served as Chief Information Security Officer for the North Carolina State Board of Elections for nearly 4 years through a contract with Woodstar Labs. In that role, he oversaw implementation of the Board of Election Security Roadmap and provided operational guidance for its security program. No hats here. Let's give it up for Mr. Kraft. Throughout the evening, we'll be having question and answer, and we do want you to get involved. Mayor Roberts, if you have a question, just raise your hand. She will give you the card. And if you can write legibly, because she's going to give that card to me, and I'm going to have to read it. So if you could write it very legibly and clearly and succinctly, no dissertation, if you just give me the question and we'll get it moving. Sounds good? All right, sounds good. All right. And you know, we also want the world to know what's happening here. So if you want to use X or social media to let people know what's happening here at Queen's University, that would be good. Okay. I looked up election integrity and just, it's just the news of the day, right? That's my business news of the day. And yesterday in Louisiana, Governor Jeff Landry signed an executive order designed to maintain integrity in the electoral process and protect the accuracy of Louisiana's voter rolls. His main focus with this executive order is to make sure nobody in this country can vote illegally in Louisiana. Every time an illegal alien votes, it cancels out a vote from a citizen. So his order requires election laws to be included on forms that are used to apply for public services and motor vehicles. What he wants to do is that, I'm going to make sure I'm getting it right, that making sure that no illegal citizens of the United States vote in the state's election. So he signed an executive order maintaining that no illegals will vote in the election. So I just want to throw that out to Michael Dickerson. I don't know, had you heard of this? Has that been talked here in North Carolina? And what do you think about an executive order making sure that that does not happen? What do you think about that?
First off, let me explain how we register people to vote. A lot of you may be from somewhere else and maybe planning on registering to vote in Mecklenburg County for the first time. If you're not in Mecklenburg County, don't live in Mecklenburg County, don't register in Mecklenburg County. First off, you got to be a U.S. citizen, and that's a requirement. And when you do register to vote, what we will look at is you will give us some information. There are a few things that are important: your name, your address, your date of birth, the last 4 digits of your Social Security, or your North Carolina driver's license number. If you give me one of those 4 things and then sign that application, I can pretty much get you registered to vote. We check, we plug all this data into a statewide system. I have a great staff back at the office. I got 8,000 in yesterday, voter registrations. And we plug it into the system. We double check it, make sure it's got everything we need. And as soon as I'm plugging it into the system, it's checking the state's database. It's checking it to see if this person's registered in Wake County also. It's also checking to see if this person is verified as a person through the Department of Motor Vehicles or the Social Security Association network. So we check all of those things just to make sure that you are on the rolls legally. If you're an undocumented person coming into town, you are signing a form. You're signing a piece of paper that says, under penalty of law, a perjury, I'm saying I am a citizen, because I've asked the question 2 or 3 times: are you a U.S. citizen, on that form? So I want to make sure everybody realizes the importance of what they're doing. I get that question a lot. I'm not going to criticize a governor from Louisiana. I'm a firm believer in the 11th commandment, that thou shalt not criticize other government agencies, officials. So I leave that alone. But I do want people to realize that there are ways that we go through, and trust me, with the 2 members sitting here that are my bosses, so say nice things. But John and Liz are very adamant that we make sure we've checked every source that we can to make sure we've covered everything to make sure the information in Mecklenburg County is as accurate as possible. I've got over 806,000 people registered in this county alone. The state's close to 7.5, 8 million. So we're 10, 11% of the state. Me and Wake County are about 22, 23% of the whole state of North Carolina. So we like to think that the state board revolves around us, not the other way. But we do perform a lot of list maintenance. We do perform a lot of stuff. And if you look at our data, it's fairly accurate, especially for 806,000 people.
So I want to understand. So the person has to document to say that I am here legally.
No, they have to say I am a U.S. citizen.
I am a U.S.
I'm sorry,
citizen.
I didn't mean to interrupt you.
Okay, that's right. That I am a U.S. citizen. So is there any other checks and balance to make sure that that person is a U.S. citizen?
Well,
once
when they
sign that?
Right, when we run it through the North Carolina Department of Motor Vehicles and the Social Security system, we will go through there. They're working on things that the state, Senate Bill 747 last year passed, where if you are a juror, called for jury duty, and you sign that form that says, hey, I got to get off jury duty, I'm not a U.S. citizen. Even if you sign that form that way, they're working on the process of getting that data over to me at our local offices. they're trying to make sure that we do it fairly throughout the whole state. There are 100 counties throughout this whole state. So we're trying to make sure that it's done equally and fairly in this process. I don't know how many that would be. I've never tried using that excuse to get off jury duty. I've tried others, but so that number is out there. The question would be, what we want to do is make sure that we're doing something to protect everybody's right to vote, at the same time being able to take care of those people who cannot register to vote and making certain that they don't get on the rolls also.
Gotcha. Thank you. Thank you. When it comes to security, I guess for Mr. Crass, can someone hack into a voting machine or a flash drive? What about the county or state website where voting tallies are reported?
So I think to start on the voting machines, the voting systems, and flash drives first, and all of that. So quick poll to the audience: how many folks have been to or heard of DEF CON? Okay, few people. So there's a place out at DEF CON called the Voting Village. Out at DEF CON, so for those that don't know, this is a very, very large, prominent cybersecurity conference that happens annually. As part of that conference, there is a group of folks who get together and put on this Voting Village, where they bring equipment that they've been able to get their hands on, however it is, buying it off eBay or whatever has led to that. They then go through and do testing on that voting equipment. So in a roundabout way, I've been going to DEF CON for a long time now, and I make a routine stop through the Voting Village because I'm interested in what they're doing there. And there has not been a year that I've gone to that Voting Village and I've not seen devices hacked. So the answer to the question is, can you hack a voting machine? Well, yes, you can look it up online and look and see it on YouTube videos of that sort that are out there. However, I think there's more to that story, and I think that's the important part about this. If you look at what it takes for them to do this, if you look at those videos, the first thing you're going to notice is they're in pieces. Like, these voting machines are disassembled into rudimentary parts laid out on the table in most cases. In the cases they're not, they might have put them back together to get them back working again to try and demonstrate this. But it takes a lot to do this. This is not a simple process. This takes a lot of time, it takes a lot of effort, and it does take technical know-how to do this. So that's a first barrier to this, and that's a sizable one. So then the second thing is, if we're talking about hacking into election systems, or voting machines in particular, how much time you spend at the poll marking your votes. If you're spending 10, 15, 20 minutes there disassembling a voting machine, we would hope that someone at the precinct is going to notice this and say something about it, right? This is something we're going to see, we're going to notice. So that's a problem at the physical layer there with that piece of it. But then each of those devices have seals on them. So if somebody attempts to even do that, they attempt to go in there, attempt to manipulate something, that seal is going to be broken. That device is going to be tampered with. It's going to be noticed. It's going to be taken out. And then there's going to be an investigation process that goes around with that. And whoever's responsible for that is going to have some very interesting questions to answer to investigators, which in North Carolina has a dedicated investigations group within the Board of Elections that takes on these types of things. And they're former law enforcement, former investigators, so they know how to run an investigation. They're going to get to the bottom of it. They're going to figure out what happened, and if it was nefarious, there's going to be some probably referral to a district attorney for charges, right? Things of that sort. So there's also that from a deterrent standpoint, that if you don't want to go to jail, you probably shouldn't try to do this, right? And then I think another piece of this, when it comes to the voting machine and hacking a voting machine, is all the work that happens at the county level that I'm sure that Michael and everybody else can talk about. that before those machines even show up at the precinct, there's testing that gets done on every single one of those machines before it shows up to make sure it's actually accurate, that it's doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. And when it comes back to the office after voting has concluded, tests are run again on that machine to ensure that it's still doing exactly what it's supposed to be doing. So even with the possibility at a technical level to be able to do some of these manipulations and what that you might have seen through the DEF CON voting village and whatnot, it is not a situation where somebody can just arbitrarily get into a voting machine and change a vote. That's just simply not practical. Where it might be technically possible, the practicality is just simply not there.
Well, I know I've seen a lot of movies where that happens. So, in recent memory, has it happened? Have you had any investigations? Because you say that there are a lot of smart people out there and a lot of people who want to, interfere. So even though you said that it will take a long time, there are some people who have nothing but time to try to infiltrate. So in recent memory, have there been any investigations? Have there been any attempts or anything like that?
So in recent, no, from an attempt standpoint that we've found to be credible. I think maybe that's a way to put it. On any given day, even your home computer your home router is getting attacked. It's sitting there online, letting you check your email, letting you browse the internet. There's attacks happening on the outside of that all the time. We see those same things within the entire state infrastructure, and that includes some of the elections apparatus. The beauty is we have tools and technology and really smart people to actually operate those things and have those protections in place when those things are coming in. I think when it comes to the investigations and the things that we have seen, and I think, District 9 is a good example of this. There was a situation, and again, I think this is maybe something for Michael and the other board to talk to, but the District 9 situation when it comes to investigations and fraud and concerns around that is a great example of this, where those things do happen. Fraud does take place. And the beauty is with all the audits, the checks, the validations that are happening throughout this process, those catch that fraud. And in that particular case, it was seen that there were problems, there were anomalies, there were weird things happening in District 9 that didn't match up. So when the Board of Elections and when other folks started analyzing that data, they identified that there were real problems there, and then they started an investigation. And I think another thing that's really important in that space is that wasn't just done by Board of Elections because the data is available. So it was media outlets that were also looking at the same data and brought up concerns. There were also other advocacy groups that were going through the data and bringing up those concerns. So at the end of the day, there are protections in place that we're using to prevent those attacks from affecting those systems. But we are also looking at a broader community of different audits and different checks that can be brought to bear to validate that the results and the things that we're going through are valid.
Okay. All right then. Y'all have some good questions. I'm gonna get to some questions right now. I'm gonna bring in Ms. McDowell and Mr. Gresham. One question is, North Carolina is one of the few states that has a professional, non-elected head of elections. How is that person certified as a nonpartisan professional? Is there an exam or certificate? And how's that different from other states?
You're talking about Michael?
Yeah. Well,
You
you're
use the word
boss.
professional. If I could answer that
Okay.
For them, there's actually the state board is sort of like my board. They have 5 members. I've got 2 Democrat members, 2 Republican members, and the 5th member who serves as the chair of my board is appointed by the governor. The process is similar to the state board's process, where there is a person who is, and my boss, she is Karen Brinson Bell. She's the executive director of the State Board of Elections. She probably had to pass some exams, but we all have certification. There's no exam that I have to sit for to see if I can do elections. Go
But
ahead.
she also is appointed by the governor.
Right. So
If the governorship changes, then it would be, and it's a Republican, then you're going to have an executive director who most likely has a Republican background.
right,
I mean, Karen is a Democrat.
correct.
So is there a certificate professional or anything? Nothing?
Well, we do have professional organizations that we all belong to. These two board members are professional, they have a professional North Carolina Association of Elections board members. We have North Carolina Association of Elections Officials. There are some national programs, the International Association of Government Officials and what's the election center, which is a big one, where we all throughout the country, we get together and we'll have annual conferences and it is good because we see how good some other states have it, how bad some other states have it. We see how good we have it here in programs and share ideas. It's a little larceny in a lot of us, not when it comes to votes. Let me just clarify that. But we all like to steal a little better process than the next person. What's that person doing? What could I do a little bit better? Or here's what we're doing, and let me build on that. So we do that. We all do get together and sort of understand what we're all going through. We all commiserated in 2020 over the COVID, but we all did it over Zoom. But there are a couple of professional organizations out there like that.
Okay, yes, go ahead.
I thought you did some certification too, as I recall.
State certification. Yes.
Okay.
That's why I said our organizations, we do state certifications too.
And how often is the state certification? Is it just one and done or every year, every other year?
Well, it's a renewal process. You have to first, I'm required to be certified by the state. So you do it when you're first year, and then you have to meet the requirement by attending state conferences and participating in those.
Yeah, I was just going to jump in on that in particular. So there's two conferences that are put on specifically for elections officials in the state that the State Board of Election puts on. And those are meant to facilitate what Michael was just talking about with the training opportunities for all these elected officials, with the certification activities and whatnot. So that's a huge benefit to the individuals who are working the elections in these counties. And what's the renewal? It's an annual training, right? As in you're going to annual training
Correct.
to renew. That's just to confirm that. So.
True or false? Is it true that if a person does not vote 3 consecutive times in North Carolina, they have to re-register to vote?
Is that for anybody?
Yeah,
Do I
is it true or
guess in the
false?
audience or me?
Audience question.
That is entirely false.
Okay.
We do not, I think the word everybody likes to use is purge. That sounds like we put them in that like purgatory. We do not purge people. We actually perform list maintenance. And it was one of the things we were talking about earlier. Every week, every month, we go through and remove people who have passed away. We have removed people who have moved out of the county. We have removed people who have become convicted of a felony. All of those people we have taken out of the process. Every time we update a precinct, we send out information to somebody. If that information comes back to me as undeliverable, twice a year we do national change of address postage mailings to people also in this county. But if that information comes back to me as undeliverable, I send another card out to that person. And if that card comes back a second time, and that second time card is a verification process, So if that card comes back to me as, hey, this person doesn't live here, then I, at that point in time, will put that voter into what we call an inactive status. It does not disqualify them from voting. It puts them in something called an inactive status. So for after that, 2 more federal elections, they're in that for 2 more federal elections. Then after 4 federal elections, I can remove that voter. But I cannot do it without sending them out information. So if you don't vote, I send you a voter card anyway, and it doesn't come back to me, you don't have to worry about it. You'll always be on the record, and you'll always be on our rolls.
We're going to bring the lawyer in. Question, what about the recent lawsuit that's being brought against the State Board of Education, and how will that affect this election? So if you could give a little synopsis, a little brief, if you know about it. And
Well, I'm not, yeah, oh, I'm not sure. Yeah, I understood.
what did I say? Oh, I'm sorry. State Board of Elections. Thank you. Y'all are up. Y'all are up. Yes.
Well, I mean, there were some challenges brought with the SB 747 that was passed last year. But at this point, we don't anticipate any changes. Voter ID is here to stay through this election. The makeup of the Board of Elections, as it is now constituted, is here to stay through this election, and we don't anticipate any changes. We've been under gerrymandering challenges since the 90s, and we don't anticipate any changes to that before November 5th. The ballots and the elections are going to be what they're going to be for now. There's still some stuff pending, but I don't participate any or foresee any changes to those coming before November 5th. We will have voter ID, and we will have the districts as they are, and the State Board of Elections is going to stay as it's presently constituted. So for both better and worse, those are what we will be working under. And it was basically the way the primary went is the way the federal is going to go on November 5th. If you voted at the primary, it's going to look exactly the same as that. If you didn't, well then please let us help to educate you about what that's going to look like, and encourage you to go do so on November 5th or during the early voting period.
Thank you. This is open up to anyone who wants to tackle it. What safeguards are in place to prevent voter intimidation?
Well, I mean, there's several things. We have rules and restrictions about where campaigning can take place at a polling place. When you go to your polling place, whether that be on election day or at an early voting site, you're going to see some campaigners, no doubt, and we thank them for doing that on behalf of each of their causes. And they, under our election laws and under our free speech, they have every right to do that. But there are restrictions about where they can do that, and the polling places will mark that off and understand that. And if you see while you're going to vote things that feel a little out of place, you should report it to the election workers when you make it inside. There will be poll observers at lots of places from both parties to watch over and understand what's going on and be able to talk to Mr. Dickerson and the Board of Elections about what they're seeing, so that they can make sure that all of that staff that's out there is doing their part to help people vote, and roll through it from there.
Right.
If you are voting at a church, however, you may see no one out there, because the places that we're able to get to be precincts, some do not allow poll workers. So don't be surprised if that happens to be one of the places that you vote, that you don't see people 50 feet out there handing you or trying to hand you literature for a candidate or someone else.
Yeah, and in North Carolina, how serious do you take that voter intimidation? Is there a number that they call, and what happens once they report? Are you obligated to investigate and get back in contact with the person? What is the process to make sure that this is being taken seriously?
Well, we get a lot of calls on election day, as you might imagine. Starting 17 days before, I guess, or the third Thursday before the election with early voting, they start and they come. It all starts though with, and all these things that you heard John and Zach talk about, it all starts though with the most important thing that we do is we train precinct officials. We have a bipartisan precinct officials. We work on that as closely as possible. But we make sure we have Democrats and Republicans, or at least Democrats and unaffiliates and Republicans. We make sure we have them. And a shout out to all of our precinct officials. I've got some that have been doing it for the 26 years that I've been here. They do it. We pay them a handsome salary of like $175 for a 15, 16-hour day. Not bad, if you ask me. But that's the high side. The low side's only about 100. But they don't do it for the money. They do it because they have a civic pride. They do it for one reason only, because this is what they're supposed to do to protect the democratic process. The other thing that they also do is they are charged to make sure that they keep that place open and unobstructed. And if anybody comes in and says, well, you know, that guy out front, he was shouting at us and told us, they go out there and talk to that guy. If that doesn't stop the guy, they have the authority to call the police. And we have had conversations with our emergency operations center already, that the police will be there and they'll be happy to respond. We've had the incidences before where somebody thought he was funny and he was going to sit outside with a gun on his lap. It was real funny. It was very funny for him because the police came, said, hey, you're going to have to leave. Police believed him. He believed the police. He left. Unfortunately, he wasn't a smart man because he came back. And when they come back after the police tell you you have to leave, now you're guilty of trespassing. So takes care of it. Again, nobody's trying to, I don't want anybody to try to demonize my poll workers. Those people are out there giving you 110%. They've been doing it. I've got one early voting worker. The lady is 94 years old. It's her second job. She likes to work at early voting. These people are out there because they want to bring you a safe and secure election. And that's all we do. We try to give them the tools to make sure they do that. And let me just add something to what Tori said earlier, talking about hacking the voting equipment. Lots of luck. We don't have any of it hooked up to the internet. There's not a wireless card. So we have to use a $250 encrypted thumb drive for these that only come into here. It's better than what we had before. Before we used to use stuff that you had to program with MS-DOS. Look that up on the internet, kids. Great, guys. So it's not like this is we're flying numbers through the air. This information is literally being housed and held right there in that computer. Now, and what Tori did not also say, and I think one of the questions we had to talk about is I have to respond to these two members right here and tell them these votes are secure. We're confident that these are the votes. We're confident what came into the office. These two are going to vote off on it on the 10 days after the election. Say, yeah, Michael, we certify you did everything right. The count is correct. One of the two is not going to like the results of the count because it's, but they're going to certify and say, yes, these results are correct as to how they were counted. But when we bring in those machines at the results at night, we don't email them to us. They don't put them on, they don't put them in some sort of computer program and wish they get to us. They literally drive those thumb drives down to our office from all 195 precincts. Yes, that's why it takes me so long to produce results. I can easily get the ones around the office over on Kenilworth, But when you're driving down here from Davidson or up from Pineville, heck, I've had people call the office and who are driving up the results and say, "Where is your office?" A little worried about that one. But then I bring those into a standalone, again, not connected to the internet. Nothing I have in my information or my voting equipment can touch the internet. Nothing can touch it. I don't even have wireless cards. I don't have ports. They cannot touch the internet. So when they drive that in, I bring the results in, plug it into a standalone computer that is literally just sitting there. Plug in those results. The person downloads those results onto it, says, yes, it downloaded all of them. Then we have to upload those results to a brand new, clean, just purchased thumb drive and walk it to the state board's website that is on, about 40 feet away in another office at our office. So it's not like any of this can be hacked by some Russian in his mom's basement saying, "I'm going to get the Mecklenburg County Board of Elections." So we're confident about that process.
Okay. It's and it's 7:21. I know we have to end at 8. So yeah,
I'm sorry.
read between the lines. Yes. Go ahead.
So I was going to actually comment on Michael's mention of the website. So and the results, because this is a common thing. We're watching those too, because on election day, and even before election day, at the state level, there's probably between 60 and 80 people that are dedicated just to the cybersecurity aspect of elections in this state. That is a little bit of an outlier. We take it very seriously. And there's a lot of folks looking at stuff, making sure there's not tampering going on, making sure nobody's trying at computer systems levels, because who knows who's going to try what. And a lot of times we're watching not only state election stuff, we're watching other government equipped systems and websites and whatnot. When it comes to the website, we're also watching that too, and the election night reporting results that are getting posted. To give everybody an idea, we're probably going to see something about 5 million hits on that per second is what, and it could be even higher than that, because it's all of you curious about the results of the election. It's us refreshing. It's media organizations refreshing to be able to put out the information. That website is taking a beating on elections day, leading up to elections day, and even after elections day. So if it lags a little bit, it's a little bit slow in coming back and refreshing, there's a good chance that it's slow only because there's so many people accessing it. And that's normal. That's what we expect. We beef up the resources, we increase what is behind it to be able to support that load so it stays up, it stays available, so people can track and can see what's going on. But those processes sometimes take time because there's a lot of stuff going on there. So if there's a small delay or things are maybe not going at the speed you'd like them to go, believe us, we want it to go fast too, because the sooner that all the precincts report in, the sooner that everything is buttoned up, it's the sooner that people get some sleep. Until that point, there's a lot of people who are getting very, very little sleep or no sleep until that gets there. So we're interested in that too, but we're going to be there waiting for those things to go and watching those systems and making sure those results are coming in. And that system is entirely independent. So back to original question I didn't answer related to, well, what if somebody takes out the website? Well, the website is the website. It's for reporting the results. It's so you can see those results. That doesn't mean your vote was changed. It doesn't mean your vote wasn't counted or won't be counted. It's a reporting mechanism to show you the information, to get the information to you as quickly as we possibly can, so people can actually know who their elected officials are going to be in as timely a manner as we can do that. But if there is ever a discrepancy and ever something pops up and there's a problem with that website, that would not mean that the election itself was hacked. The website might go down, might go offline. That doesn't mean the election was hacked or votes were changed or anything like that. So I think that's some important context to share in the grand scheme of what we're talking about. So.
Thank you. Ms. McDowell, this question is for you. What's the board's role post-election?
The board's role is to, we're always there monitoring all the votes. We start counting absentee ballots 6 weeks prior to the election. We meet every week. We go through every absentee ballot, making sure it's properly done. It's all bipartisan so that everything's executed properly. Then we're all there on election night, following and watching everything and making sure things are going smoothly, answering calls. We answer calls from constituents, from people, poll workers. Then after the election, we have to deal with provisional ballots. So we have a provisional ballot meeting, which goes through, people that have cast a ballot. We're not sure if there's all different exceptions to why they didn't vote a real ballot. And so we go through that process. And then we end up at Canvass Day, 10 days after the election, where we certify the results. Everything is brought together, all absentee ballots, provisional ballots, election day, and early voting. And it's all brought together on Canvass Day where we certify.
Right.
And also, another question, they want someone to describe the chain of custody in detail for both absentee ballots and early in-person. Where are those votes stored and when are they tabulated?
Well, we can't tell you everything. I have to kill half of you if I do that, break into the office. No, we take security very seriously. And we do secure each of these in some place that we call a vault at our office that has a pass key that I have and an emergency pass key hidden somewhere in the office. We also tag those with a security tag on those so that everybody knows these are the ones we processed.
Yeah, explain. For the absentee ballots initially, we have each week when we meet, we have the absentee ballots are run through the machine. They're on a thumb drive. The thumb drive's put into an envelope of which we all sign across the seal on that. Michael puts it in another lockbox, secure box, and then puts it in the vault.
Exactly.
Right. And we do that for 6 weeks prior.
Oh,
And
yes,
then-
yeah.
And we count every night. Once we've looked at, one Democrat and one Republican have looked to see with the absentee ballots, you now have to have either 2 witnesses to the signature or a notary and a copy of your license in there. So once we've looked at all of them, once they've been run through the machine, we look at the tally from the machine to see if it's the tally that we have, to make sure there's no discrepancy between the absentee ballots we've looked at and what has been run through the very large, I wouldn't call it a tabulator.
They are tabulated. You're exactly right.
Explain no early voting.
Early voting is a different process. First off, John said we look at the ballot. He looks at the ballot application envelope. It's a return envelope. We process them through. We don't tally any of those votes until election day at 2 o'clock. You all, and that I embargo until 7:30. They're not allowed to share results of anything, but they say, okay, Michael, these are all of them. But he literally, they will sit there and they'll count each absentee ballot. And then I'll run them through the processor after they say, these are all good, Michael. Open them up, process them, run them through. And then the process number I come up with is the same number. It has to be the same number that they had counted. If not, I have to run them through again or they have to recount again. Usually it's me running them through again. But for early voting, every night at early voting, I ask the sites to bring those ballots back to me every night. Each site will have 33 early voting sites here in Mecklenburg County this fall, starting October 17th at 8 o'clock, weekdays 8 to 7:30, Saturdays 8 to 3, 3 Saturdays 8 to 3, 2 Sundays 1 to 5. That every night they will bring those ballots. So they will empty out the tabulator at their site. They'll put those bags in a secure pack bag, deliver them to my office, and at my office, I will then turn around and secure them again in this vault that I have that will stay there. And I keep all ballots for 22 months after the fact.
Is it a third party or is it county officials, and is it more than one person that's delivering?
Oh, yes, yes. It's the site coordinator and the two, you have site coordinator, which is a chief judge. And then I have a Republican judge and a Democratic judge at each site. They secure the pack, sign it, and then send it down to me. And it's on a tamper-proof seal. I get that into my office. I'm very fortunate in this county. I have a sheriff that will respond and will send a sheriff to sit in my parking lot every night they come into the office. So I feel it's safe, it's secure. They bring in all their voting material like that, the ballots that they pull from the tabulator. And we also bring in their applications of people that apply. So we match those up and know that we're doing it right. Good question.
Mr. Deason, can you quickly explain what a provisional ballot is?
Certainly, I'll try. So if you go to vote and, well, let's take a couple different examples. If you go to vote on election day, but you go to the wrong precinct and they realize that, you're, in Mint Hill when you should be voting in Matthews. You can still vote, but they're going to give you a provisional ballot and let you go ahead and vote that way and note that, and then that can be cured later through the process. If you go to vote and your addresses don't, you give an address that doesn't match your voter rolls, then they may ask you to vote through a provisional ballot. If you have, now that we have voter ID, if your ID is not one that can conform with the restrictions under the voter ID, they can give you a provisional ballot. Now, as several people on the panel thought about, just because you cast a provisional ballot doesn't mean that your vote won't count. There are ways to then go through and cure that or certify that, and many, I think I've heard some stats that around 60% to 70% of all provisional ballots wind up counting. Obviously, there are some that, for various reasons, you didn't actually register or other things, they cause the vote to be invalid, and those are properly thrown out. But just because there's a provisional ballot, and if you do cast if you are out there and you go to vote or you hear somebody say they had to cast a provisional ballot, then you should encourage them to reach out to the Mecklenburg Board of Elections, and they can talk to them there and help them understand why there was a provisional ballot cast and what can be done to make sure that that provisional ballot is ultimately counted if the person is indeed a person that should be cast in a ballot.
And you can get different results if you end up at the wrong precinct. However, you have the same voting style. Maybe all of your votes will count. If you go to a precinct that has a different style so that they're perhaps different candidates for some office, some of your votes will count, but others will not. And we have a fellow who is very good, who goes through all of the provisional ballots and then brings them to us on a day where that's all we're doing, and shows us the categories. And we look at those ballots, we look at them and make a decision as to whether all or some or none will count. because of whatever the reason was that they were asked to count a provisional ballot.
And there was a question on that. They wanted to know, what is the process for caring for those provisional ballots? Are they locked away until, or what the process for caring for those provisional ballots? Oh, curing the ballots. I'm sorry, curing.
Well, if it's a provisional that needed to show a photo ID, you can come down to my office by 5 p.m. on the day before the canvass, which is this year, the 15th of November, and show me your ID, and that'll validate your provisional. We can move on. There may be something else that the provisional may cure itself, to tell you the truth. If you filed a registration and you kind of got it done like 75% of the way, then I'm going to put you into an incomplete queue, but this provisional might get you over the top and be able, so I can accept your provisional envelope as the rest of your registration, and we can go ahead and vote you. The job's not to not let you vote. As John was saying, the job is to make sure you're voting for the right people. If I go to Matthews and vote, well, I do vote Matthews, but I go downtown, well, that's not the same representative, that's not the same state senator, that's not the same congressional member. So that's what we want to be sure of.
I mean, most provisional ballots occur on election day.
Right.
Okay, just to make that clear, not early voting.
Right.
We don't have, you can vote anywhere on early voting, and you're going to get the right ballots down. So I think we have to make that distinction because, and how many provisionals have we had in these?
A couple thousand at the most in a big election. We used to start much bigger, and that was a nice plug by Liz to go out and vote early if you plan on voting this year. Make sure you go vote early, because I noticed on one of those questions, what are you going to do if a hurricane hits on election day? I'm going to wish I would have voted early, is what I'm going to do.
Gotcha.
If people knew how secure you're treating the ballots and early voting, and more people would vote early. The concern was what happens to my ballot is in early, and it could be somehow zapped out. If people knew how to do those with the 3 people, they're involved, and more people would vote early.
Okay, thank you. Next question. Can you explain the controversial law in Georgia that allows local officials to delay counting votes? And is there any sign that North Carolina will try to pass a similar law?
To the second part of that question, highly unlikely. I'll let Michael talk about the first part of that.
What, delay counting votes?
Yes.
No,
You don't-
in Georgia.
Oh,
In
state of Georgia.
In
Now,
Georgia,
again, I
local
told you, I don't
officials.
criticize other government offices. Even Georgia.
Well, I guess part of that problem is the absentee counting.
Right, yeah, and
That's the
and
issue.
Liz brought up a good point. Pennsylvania was the same way in 2020. In Georgia, I think Arizona was the same. Well, the three closest. Hey, if it's not a close election, you all don't care. We're old news, and you know as well as I do. But I expect to be a close election again. So we're going to make sure we do everything that we do by the books. We, as Liz and John mentioned, we process absentees. I get them starting the 5th Tuesday before the election, October 5th, I think it is. I get them basically every day, as long as it's needed until the election day, so that they can look at the absentees, process them, and get them in there. We do all of this before, where Georgia, Arizona, Pennsylvania has to wait till the day of to start counting their absentee ballots. Well, if I'm Philadelphia and I've got 2 million absentee ballots coming in, it's going to take me some time. It's going to take me some time. Throw on top of that, we're trying to see if Pennsylvania is going to go blue or red. Same way it was with Georgia. Gosh, we got Atlanta and Savannah, they're reporting in that, well, they still got those absentees. We have a little bit of a delay in counting ourselves. as John and Liz mentioned, and I think Zach actually mentioned too, the provisional voting. If it's a close race, don't call that race. Don't think, oh, I can go sleep. I know John's going to win it or something like that. If it's a close race, provisionals can make a difference. And like Liz asked, we had 2,000, I think it was, in the last election, simply because we have very few people voting on election day anymore. In the 2020 election, 88% of the people voted before election day. 88% of the people. They went through 367,000 absentee early votes. They went through 125,000 by mail votes. We had all of that done, close to 90% of our voting. We only had 67,000 people show up on election day in 2020. That's a city of Charlotte primary. We can do that with our eyes closed. But it was nice. Now, I don't suspect it'll be that way this year because we all had the COVID election in 2020. Nobody wanted to go out, nobody to touch. It was just a difficult time then dealing with it. But everybody tried to vote early. Everybody tried to vote by mail. And one thing that these two haven't mentioned yet is we had 565,000 people vote. We had to do a complete recount of the election for the Sherry Beasley, Paul Newby race. 567,000 votes. We ran every vote back through the reader in our county. We had to do it statewide. We read everyone back through the reader, read everything through. When we finished, we were off by 4 votes. Out of 565,000, I challenge anybody to beat that, except for Wake County, because they probably did it better.
Or they will say so.
No, they will. But so we know the machines are good and accurate. We know the equipment works, and we know we have a secure process to make sure that we have everybody, once you vote, that vote is captured and that vote is secure.
Question legal. How does the state interact with the federal government around elections? We've all heard the soundbite. All I need is 10,000 some votes and things like that. We've all heard that soundbite. So tell me, how does that work, the interaction between federal and state and all that stuff? Mr. Deason?
Not sure. I mean, we have the federal government doesn't run our elections. For better or worse, we have 50 separate elections going on when we vote for president, because each state runs its election how it chooses to do so. Georgia is different than us. South Carolina is different than us. California is different than us. And so each state runs its own election based on its own constitution and its own laws. And then each state then reports back to the federal government what its results were. Now, the FBI does have and through the Carter Center, I was able to hear, a spokesperson from the FBI. They do have someone who is assisting the states and who is partly, watching over to help the states out to make sure that their elections are running the way they want them to and fairly, and to, ensure no criminal or civil disobedience in that. But each state is running its own election and then forwarding those results to the federal government to then certify that election.
And really quickly to jump on that, on the federal interaction there, because that happens on the cyber side pretty heavily. So on election day, we have federal assets in the room with us to act as communication conduits in the event that there is a problem. They're not telling anybody how to do anything. There is a resource. They're sharing information that we might care about in terms of if there are threats or anything does come up that we need to know about. They're there to share that information with us. and they're there to assist us in the event that we do need help and we do need them to run certain information down and tell us if there's a problem. We can ask them for help in those areas, and we do that regularly with cybersecurity, because when we see some anomalous thing going on, maybe it's something, maybe it's nothing. We want to gather information about whether or not we do need to do that. And our federal partners in that space, which are in the room with us on election day, absolutely play an important part of that and help us get to ground truth on those things and whether we need to really care about some of those cyber things going on. And in another area, that's the same thing for other parts of security, like thinking Homeland Security, DHS, the CISA team and whatnot at an investigations level, at more of a law enforcement level on the ground. If there's threats happening on election day, there was mention of the guy who shows up with the gun because he thought it would be funny. That stuff absolutely goes up to the state and absolutely gets handed over. And we're talking with federal partners about those things. I think there's one other piece where there's federal interaction to some extent that's worth mentioning here, and that's the certification of voting systems at the EAC level, Elections Assistance Commission level, which they do put out, and they do certification of voting systems at their level. And I bring that up because North Carolina doesn't just take that at face value. I think it's really important. North Carolina goes through and does North Carolina certification on top of the federal certification. So when we're talking about the machines you're using in your casting a ballot and what Michael is talking about with tabulating votes and those things, those aren't just signed off on at that level. They're retested independently by North Carolina to ensure that those machines are meeting North Carolina standards and that we can put trust in that those devices are going to work the way that we expect them to work. And then going one step further, the code that they're using on those machines is held in escrow. They're required to put up a bond, and I think it's 17 million, isn't it?
17.
So to do business in the state, period, and to sell that equipment, they're required to put 17 million into a bond just in the event that something happens and we have to rerun an election, something of that sort. That money is there. They're going to pay for that if it is their fault that something happened. And then the code running on those, if there's a problem, we can go back and we can audit that code. We can review that and find if there really was a problem in something that they had put in there because it's held in escrow.
Since we are at a college campus, we got to give some love to our college students. Question, I went online and there's some rumors out there. One rumor is college students must vote in their hometown. So can you talk about college students voting in this election? What do they have to do so they can vote?
I'll take that first because I did anticipate that and look at some. You certainly are welcome to vote in your hometown, whether that be, some other place here in North Carolina or in another state. If you have registered there and you maintain a residence through your parents or through some other apparatus, then you likely can still vote in that other place. But that means, traveling back to that place on election day or during the early voting period, or getting a mail ballot sent to you and voting in that manner. So you certainly, or you also have the ability to register yourself as living here. And you can, take your ID and some sort of, something from the college, if you live in the dorm, that verifies your address is in a dorm, or a utility bill or bank statement or other check or anything else that would verify that you live, in a house or apartment around here. And you can register that way and vote locally at an early voting location, or even if you can get registered before the registration deadline on election day. So there are ways to vote here, and then of course you can always, if you're already registered, maintain that. And I did make some copies if anybody wants them.
Yeah, and I guess you have to find out the deadline when you have to request that mail-in ballot and things like that, correct?
There are deadlines to that.
Yeah.
That's coming up very soon. It was like September 15th or something, Michael,
To request it?
to request it.
Yeah, the request, the last time you request an absentee ballot is the week before the election. So, actually, we're coming up on some pretty important dates. September 6th, that would be next, not this Friday, next Friday. It's the first day I can send out absentee ballots by mail. Currently, I've got over 12,000, which is a heck of a lot better than I had in 2020. The first day in 2020, I sent out 77,000. So you'll have that, and if you request, and to go with what Zach was saying, there are a couple of things you can do online. If you got a motor vehicle, if you drive a North Carolina driver's license, you can go online with EDMV and register to vote. I know students, you all don't like paper, which is good. You can't mail me something back in. That's impossible. My daughter asked me the other day, and she's 28 now. I shouldn't say her age. She asked me the other day, she said, "What, Dad, where do you get stamps?" I said, "Do what I do, get them out of your mother's pocketbook." But so they don't have a way of mailing it. So use an electronic method if you can. And the other thing is, just as Zach was speaking about, you can request an absentee ballot on an online portal. where you go in and type your information in, and I can get that ballot mailed out to you. And you can either vote in anywhere in North Carolina. If you're in Wake County, you can have that ballot mailed to you. If you're going to school here, they can go online and you're registered. They'll send you a ballot. They'll get it.
And then also keeping with students, this question, for our first-time voters, can you please explain the poll process, what a poll worker can ask and what can't they ask? So if you could explain that to our first-time voters, what can they expect when they get to the polling place?
Sure. First time voter, keep in mind, if you vote by mail, if you vote early or vote election day, first time voter, every voter is going to be asked to show a photo ID. That's the most important thing. That's the big change from 2022. But you're going to walk in, they're going to ask for your name and your address. They look you up in a system, whether it's electronically or in a paper poll book. We still use those on election day. You'll look up a poll book. They're going to pull a label off of yours. They're going to ask you to state your name and state your address. And at that point in time, they're going to peel off that label, give you to somebody. They're going to look at your photo ID. All thing works out. They're going to send you over to the voting panel. There are going to be assistants there that are willing to help you. Literally, these people are trained to help you. They're not trying to scare you. They're going to help you. So they will be there. They'll put you on a voting panel, and you will press your vote. They'll tell you who you're going to vote for. The card spits out. You take it and you run it through a tabulator. Most important thing is they'll give you an I voted sticker, and then you're done. It is literally painless. It is a simple process.
And one other thing with respect to the student IDs, that the state board has sent a list out
yes.
of all the different schools or universities in the state which accept that photo ID.
Right, we can accept. Since not all of them we can accept.
Yeah.
I think Queens is on here.
Yeah.
One thing,
Yeah, good, thank
I
you.
mean, that's just,
one thing that has changed, if you're going to mail your ballot back in,
Oh, yeah, good point.
up until a recent change in the law, if you mailed your ballot and there was a postmark on it saying that you mailed it on or before election day, and we got it within 3 days after the election, we counted. The legislature changed that so that your mail-in ballot has to be in our hands by 7 o'clock,
7:30
7:30
on
On
election day.
election
on
day.
election day. So if you're getting near the end of the period, getting to election day, and you haven't mailed that in, you might decide not to mail it in and go vote on election day. That change seems strange to me because the voter, we would get votes that had been mailed 5 to 6 days before the election day, but for whatever reason, the post office didn't deliver it until the day or two after. We counted those. Now, that's not happening. So that's one thing to remember if you're going to do vote by mail, or what we also call an absentee ballot.
All right. Is it too late to become a poll watcher?
Poll worker.
Poll worker?
Poll worker, observers are the party, so you would have to get with the party committees if you want to do that. Poll worker, I am very fortunate in Mecklenburg County. I've got a great number of volunteers that basically do this. If you do want to become one, feel free to go onto our website. We've got the hands raised, want to volunteer. Sign up through that and we'll get more people out there. But yeah, feel free. It never hurts to ask and request. It also doesn't hurt if you want to do some work at the office. It gets kind of busy this time of year when you're trying to process 10, 15,000 ballots a day. So
Then
welcome
also, yeah, and we're wrapping up. Are you anticipating any issues with the postal service when it comes to mail-in ballots and things like that?
I'm not answering that one because I had told you all about the 11th commandment. Right.
Anyone like to take us, what do you do? I mean, how long do you wait? You know, if you have to rely on something, how long do you wait before a ballot is not counted? I mean.
Well, I just last week, I got an absentee back from the March primary. It's going to happen. It's going to happen. Hence the reason why it's important. As John said, if you're, gee, I don't know if it's going to get back in time. Go ahead and vote in person if you're in here. Go vote early.
They drop it off at the office.
Yourself. Do me a favor, students, don't go over to the hall and say, hey, I'm going over to Board of Elections, drop off everybody's absentee ballot. That's not permitted unless they're all your relatives. And if you are, you got problems. But the individual or near relative is the only person that can drop that off. Hence the stuff that you all talked about in District 9 earlier. So keep that in mind. But John's right. Do that.
Gotcha. Just want to go down. Last question. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. 30 seconds. Can you name one thing that can be done to improve the voting process? You've been doing this for a very long time. One thing that can be improved, our voting process here in North Carolina. We'll go down. We'll start with you, Mr. Crash. 30 seconds. Just one thing that can be improved to make things better here in North Carolina when it comes to voting.
So I would say just, and this isn't really at a citizen level so much as it is at General Assembly level, proper funding. I mean, at the end of the day, stable funding is very, very important. This is a year-round job. This is not something where people show up and magically November 5th happens. This is something where I was just looking through this in terms of how many elections I'd worked in through my tenure at State Board of Elections and now as State Chief Risk Officer, and I'd hit 20. And that's in that 4 to 5 years. So the funding and the stability there is super, super important.
Has funding gone up, down, or has stayed the same for the past 5 years?
It's gone down because grant funding was there, and grant funding has been running out steadily to support elections.
Gotcha.
So it's painful.
Gotcha. Mr. Deason, one thing in 30 seconds that can improve the voting process here in North Carolina.
Well, it goes to what Tori was saying about funding. You know, early voting has been one of the best things we've done, but because not every county has the same amount of funding, not every county can offer early voting in the way we do. We do a very good job in the 33 sites and being able to spread them out over the county. But neighboring counties do not have that luxury and do not offer it with the, breadth that we do and with the breadth that is necessary that could help more and more people vote by having those early voting days and those early voting times in as many locations, because the more we can bring the election to the people, the more likely they are to vote. And that's what we need. We want people to vote and vote.
And I guess, do you write your legislature for more funding? Is that how that works in the county? Is that how that works?
Well, at this point, you're talking to your county commissioners.
Okay.
The legislature is not really sending much money there
Okay.
anyway.
Mr. Gresham, 30 seconds. What can be done to improve the voting process here in
Well,
North
the thing
Carolina?
I talked about earlier, I think the legislature should go back, that if you vote by election day, by mail, that vote ought to count. I find it very disappointing that a certain number of people will have voted correctly, but their vote won't count because the post office didn't get it there by election day.
Ms. McDowell?
I would think right now, because I get lots of questions about this and something Michael mentioned, when you register to vote, you only have to say that you are a U.S. citizen. You do not have to prove that you are a U.S. citizen. And I think that's something that our legislature here, the General Assembly, should address. And I do think that that is an issue across the country. And I just think that is something that we need to resolve.
Thank you. Mr. Dickinson, 30 seconds.
30 seconds. I think the biggest thing is it's twofold. Trust. This is a trusted election event. Make sure you trust in the system. Ask the questions. Your person's not going to win everything, but trust that the votes were tallied, the votes were counted. Trust in that election official that's working with you out at that precinct. Trust in that early voting worker, or trust that our absentee by mail process is working. We're here to get your trust. And most importantly is please respect. I don't mind people criticizing me, but please respect the poll workers. Please respect the people that are out there doing this job day in and day out and making sure that you can get out there and practice your right to vote.
Thank you. Thank you,
Thank you.
panel. Let's give it up for our panelists. Thank you so much. Thank you. And thank you. Now I'll turn it over to Mayor Roberts.
Okay, so thank you all. The panel was amazing. I've been instructed by the photographer who runs the show that we got to stay and get a picture. So none of you guys leave. But I want to thank everybody for being here. Please tell your friends and neighbors. If you didn't register, if you could, because we're going to send an email to everybody and just ask for your advice. Was it long enough? Was it too long? What could we have done better? We're doing 23 more of these. So we do want your opinion and feedback. And if you didn't get a question answered, you can also use that email or that form to ask your question, and we'll try to get an answer for you as well. This is streamed on, it's been recorded. That'll be available online. We're also going to do another virtual event October 15th, and we'll get you more information on that. And thank you again to Queens University. Amazing venue and amazing support. Hadi Mubarak got flyers out all over campus, and Ladarius did. Ladarius got the pizza for the, so we appreciate all that. I have a gift for all of our panelists. I had an artist friend of mine make a picture of a Volkswagen bus with me and Bob sticking our heads out. This is the tour bus, and on the back, it's the tour. So there's Charlotte right there, August 27th. So everyone in the panel gets a t-shirt. Bob, anything final to say?
I would ask all of you to think these two people are going 24 places in North Carolina to help people understand how to vote.
All right, let's get a picture, everybody. Bob? Go vote. And, oh, everyone on stage, we can get a picture of the panel.
Yeah.
Oh, down here? Oh, for the president, yes.
I'm gonna watch this and save the videos you just.
Absolutely.
That you sent me.
Well, it's interesting